Khalid ibn al-Walid was history's ultimate undefeated desert warlord. He fought over 100 massive battles and never lost a single one. He completely shattered two massive global superpowers simultaneously. He broke 9 solid iron swords in a single day of desperate combat. He executed a miraculous, suicidal march across a waterless, blazing desert to ambush an empire. He orchestrated the most brilliant double-envelopment maneuver since Hannibal at Cannae. He was dismissed from absolute supreme command and humbly fought on as a regular foot soldier. He bore the legendary, terrifying title of the Drawn Sword of Allah. This is the breathtaking chronicle of the greatest tactical genius of the ancient Middle East. The legendary commander was born in Mecca into the powerful and wealthy Quraysh tribe. As a young aristocrat, he was heavily trained in elite horseback riding, archery, and close-quarters combat. He initially fought fiercely against the early Muslims before his ultimate conversion. At the Battle of Uhud, he spotted a fatal flaw in the Muslim defensive lines on a strategic hill. He launched a devastating, brilliant cavalry flanking maneuver that completely turned the tide of the battle. He was one of the very few military commanders in history to actually defeat an army led by Prophet Muhammad. However, his brilliant tactical mind eventually realized the ultimate truth of the new Islamic faith. In 629, he traveled directly to Medina and officially pledged his absolute loyalty to Islam. If you love these gripping tales of absolute historical ambition, please like this video right now. He was immediately deployed to the fierce Battle of Mu'tah against a massive Byzantine Roman army. When 3 successive Muslim commanders were brutally killed, the desperate army elected Khalid as their leader. He utilized brilliant psychological warfare, rotating his troops at night to fake the arrival of massive reinforcements. He personally engaged in such violent, fierce frontline combat that he shattered 9 different swords in his hands. He successfully orchestrated a masterful, tactical retreat that completely saved the Muslim army from total annihilation. Prophet Muhammad was so incredibly impressed that he officially bestowed upon him the eternal title of Saifullah. The title translated directly to the Drawn Sword of Allah, a terrifying moniker he would prove repeatedly. Following the death of the Prophet, massive rebellions violently erupted across the entire Arabian Peninsula. The first caliph, Abu Bakr, appointed Khalid as the supreme commander to crush the massive apostate armies. He unleashed his unstoppable forces in a lightning-fast campaign known as the Ridda Wars. He completely outmaneuvered and destroyed several rebel factions through pure speed and shock tactics. His ultimate challenge came against a dangerous false prophet named Musaylima the Liar. Musaylima commanded an incredibly massive and deeply fanatic rebel army at the Battle of Yarmouk. The brutal combat was so incredibly fierce that the battlefield became notoriously known as the Garden of Death. Khalid personally led a terrifying frontal charge that completely shattered the rebel defensive lines. His absolute, unyielding courage inspired his exhausted men to completely annihilate the massive rebel force. He single-handedly reunified the entire Arabian Peninsula under the banner of Islam in just a few short months. Make sure to subscribe to Stickman Chronicles because we drop epic history content every single day. With Arabia secure, he turned his terrifying sights toward the massive, heavily armored Sassanid Persian Empire. He marched an army of just 18,000 men into the wealthy, heavily guarded province of Iraq. He sent a famous, chilling letter to the Persian commanders, telling them his men loved death as much as the Persians loved life. At the Battle of Chains, the arrogant Persian heavy infantry literally chained themselves together to prevent retreating. Khalid completely exhausted the heavily armored Persians through a series of rapid, exhausting desert marches before attacking. He utterly slaughtered the chained Persian infantry, turning their own defensive tactic into a massive, deadly trap. He heavily relied on his elite light cavalry to constantly outmaneuver the slow, heavily armored Persian cataphracts. He struck with the terrifying speed of a desert sandstorm, giving his enemies absolutely no time to recover or regroup. He then marched to the Battle of Walaja, facing a Persian army vastly superior in massive numbers. He orchestrated an absolute tactical masterpiece, perfectly executing a rare double-envelopment maneuver. He completely surrounded and annihilated the massive Persian army, perfectly echoing the ancient genius of Hannibal. At the gruesome Battle of Allies, the fierce fighting lasted for hours with absolute, unrelenting brutality. He completely shattered the Persian counterattack, causing so many casualties that the nearby river ran red with blood. He rapidly conquered the heavily fortified city of Hira, forcing the crippled Persian Empire to pay massive tributes. In barely a single year, he completely conquered the entire western half of the mighty Persian Empire. A sudden, desperate order arrived from the Caliph commanding him to immediately march west to save the Muslim armies in Syria. The heavily fortified Roman Byzantine Empire was massing a massive counterattack to crush the isolated Muslim forces. The traditional route to Syria was heavily guarded by Roman fortresses and would take far too much precious time. Khalid made the absolutely insane, suicidal decision to march his entire army directly through the trackless, waterless Syrian desert. He famously forced his camels to drink massive amounts of water, then slaughtered them on the journey to harvest the water from their stomachs. After 5 days of pure, agonizing hell, his exhausted army miraculously emerged behind enemy lines, completely shocking the Byzantines. The brutal desert crossing was so incredibly secret that the Byzantine border guards had absolutely no warning of his arrival. He rapidly united the fractured Muslim armies in Syria and immediately seized supreme tactical command. He laid a devastating, grueling siege to the ancient, heavily fortified megacity of Damascus. Utilizing brilliant spies and perfect timing, his elite soldiers rapidly scaled the massive stone walls during a raucous city festival. He successfully conquered the magnificent crown jewel of Syria, completely humiliating the Byzantine Emperor Heraclius. The furious Byzantine Emperor dispatched a colossal, multinational army of over 80,000 men to crush the Muslim forces. Khalid commanded a vastly outnumbered force of barely 40,000 men at the strategic Yarmouk Valley. He brilliantly organized his army into a revolutionary new tactical formation composed of 36 highly flexible infantry squadrons. He maintained a massive, highly mobile elite cavalry reserve stationed firmly in the rear to plug any broken lines. The apocalyptic Battle of Yarmouk raged fiercely for 6 absolutely brutal, exhausting, and bloody days. The deafening clash of steel and the blinding desert dust created a terrifying, apocalyptic nightmare for the soldiers. Time after time, the massive Byzantine heavy infantry broke through the Muslim lines, threatening total annihilation. Every single time, Khalid personally led his mobile cavalry reserve to precisely strike the Byzantine flanks and push them back. He constantly rode up and down the chaotic front lines, shouting epic battle cries to keep his exhausted men fighting. On the decisive 6th day, he unleashed his ultimate masterpiece of tactical battlefield deception. He launched a massive, coordinated cavalry assault that completely drove the Byzantine cavalry entirely off the battlefield. He brilliantly utilized the harsh desert winds, forcing the blinding sand directly into the faces of the Roman legions. He then completely surrounded the trapped, exhausted Byzantine infantry with his remaining forces. The massive Roman army was completely pushed backward into a steep, terrifying river ravine and utterly destroyed. This single, spectacular victory permanently stripped the Levant and Syria from the massive Roman Empire forever. At the absolute height of his incredible, legendary military glory, the new Caliph Umar issued a shocking decree. Umar officially dismissed Khalid from supreme command, replacing him with the humble general Abu Ubaidah. The Caliph feared that the soldiers were beginning to idolize Khalid and believe victory came from him rather than God. In an unprecedented display of absolute loyalty and humility, Khalid accepted his demotion without a single word of protest. He continued to fight fiercely on the front lines as a common cavalryman, remaining the tactical brain behind the new commander. He spent his final years living quietly in the city of Homs, having completely broken two ancient global superpowers. In 642, the undefeated legend lay dying in his bed from illness rather than a glorious battlefield wound. He wept bitterly, revealing that his body was covered in over 100 deep scars from swords, spears, and arrows. He famously lamented that after a lifetime of seeking martyrdom, he was forced to die quietly in his bed like a common camel. He left absolutely no massive material wealth behind, only his weapons, his armor, and his legendary warhorse. He successfully proved that true greatness is measured by absolute loyalty rather than personal vanity. He remains history's only supreme commander to fight over 100 major battles without suffering a single defeat. His legendary tactical maneuvers are still studied by elite military academies across the globe today. He successfully shattered the invincible aura of the Roman and Persian empires simultaneously. He will forever be remembered as the unstoppable desert storm that completely changed the map of the world. Smash that like button if you were blown away by this ancient legendary tactical genius. Subscribe to Stickman Chronicles right now to join our growing community of history lovers. We upload brand new history videos every single day, so you never miss an epic tale. Leave a comment below letting us know which historical figure we should cover in our next video. Thank you so much for watching this deep dive into ancient warrior spirit. See you tomorrow for another wild story on Stickman Chronicles.